You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
It's another episode of the KCSN Draft Show presented by Miller Lite. Eric, Galko, we are so close, my friend. What's good?
Yeah, 2.5 weeks now until the draft comes to KC. Crazy.
Can't wait. Let's go. I'm so excited, man. I just can't wait for everybody to see our city. Matthew Lane, I can't wait to see you. You're going to be in town for draft week as well.
That is true. I will be venturing back to Kansas City for draft week. I'm excited for it. It's almost here. We've kind of hit that slog in between like the combine and all the pro days, and now just kind of waiting for the draft. And here on the outside, it feels like it lasts forever. It feels like it's like 3 months long. So I'm ready for it. I'm ready to get there. Get a couple more weeks. 2.5 weeks.
Just as a reminder, we're going to be at Power and Light all week of draft weekend. So Thursday we're going to be at Pizza Bar. Friday, Saturday we are going to be at No Other Pub. It's going to be a lot of fun. Make sure you come hang out with us. There's also a party at Holiday Distillery as well for you to check out on Sunday. Trust me, you are not going to miss that. It's going to be a good time. I can't wait. We're going to be breaking down the cornerbacks. There are a lot of cornerbacks to discuss. This is a really good cornerback. Is this the deepest position in the draft, Galko? How close do you think it is? Or it is. There you go.
Yeah. I think it's clearly the one, and I think it's such an impressive group that your initial thought is, all right, it's deep. So maybe some guys slip a little bit because teams get guys later. But like, no, my discussions with teams, it's been like, nope, these guys are really good, and we're not going to let the guy that we like a lot fall in the draft at all. So I think you'll see more corners than we think in the first round, and then we'll see a lot go on day 2 and then a lot go on day 3. And whoever's left will get a big PFA deal, but they'll be going early and often because teams really like this corner class.
And corner is kind of one of those positions that, two corners can both be really good, but can be better for like entirely different schemes, right? So I think that kind of goes to the point that it's hard to just be like, oh, we like this class, we can find a guy we like later, but what if, just those guys that would fit your scheme the best are gone? Like, you're not going to risk that happening. It's one of those few positions where every single player is not just going to essentially be plug and play. So yeah, I think the guys will come off. Interestingly enough, very athletic cornerback class, but very big. A lot of big, really long physical corners in this class. I mean, that's good for the NFL. That's where they want to be. It seems like it's been a couple years since we've had a corner class, not even just this good, but this big and athletic.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's probably a little short on nickel corners, which I'm talking to some of those guys a little bit later on too. But to that point, that's a position's been maybe a stronger part of corners in the last couple of years of drafts. But now this year's got 3-4 guys who can play nickel in the NFL early on. So that's like the weird give and take. And those guys will go earlier than we expect too. But no, all in, a lot of long, athletic, physical guys. And it's probably coming at a good time because we've seen like unbelievable receiver classes the last 3 years. So NFL teams definitely need some corner help because there's a lot of impressive receivers out there.
If you're just looking at some of the mock drafts out there, if you're looking at just like you could put together a list of 8, 9, 10 names that have seen their way into the first round of various people's mocks. And that's what's so crazy about this draft too. Like, you guys kind of point to type fitting to a team, different styles of player. There's a lot of players to choose from. If I set the over under at, I'll be aggressive, 6.5 cornerbacks taken. Is it the under or is it the over?
In the first round?
Yes, in the first round.
I'd probably say the over. That's probably tight. I mean, 7 would be a lot of corners, right? That'd be, what's that? My math is bad now, right? That's a little less than a fourth of the first round would be corners. But
it's like 22% of them. Yeah. It's aggressive. That's why I said it's aggressive.
Fractions. I wasn't good at fractions. No, I think I'm hesitating because I think the number is going to be 6. And as we said on the offensive tackle, episode right too, it's like teams that are playoff teams always want more linemen and more DBs. So I could definitely say, I can tell you 7 names that I think are very much in play. And there's probably one guy that could be a surprise, but I think 7's really realistic, which is crazy.
That's a hefty number. I mean, that's a hefty
you can
number.
Find it.
So that's what I mean.
There's 5 guarantees, I think, that are going to go first round for my discussion, like no matter what. And I think there's 3-4 more guys that definitely could be there if not going to be there. It's crazy.
So yeah, I mean, we want to get to that second group, so I'm just going to run through like the guys that I think we're probably looking at as the guarantees here. Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon, Devin Witherspoon out of Syracuse, Joey Porter Jr. out of Penn State. Is Cam Smith out of South Carolina? Is he one of these locks, or do you have him in that second group? No, okay,
not a lock.
So Keely Ringo, Georgia,
not a lock, but in the mix.
No,
both in the mix.
Deontay Banks, Maryland.
Yep.
And then, I mean, who's next? DJ Turner and Michigan. Is he getting any first round love?
I have a couple.
Yeah,
I have a couple.
Okay. I mean, I'm just reading down a list. I wasn't guessing. I was just reading straight down.
Can I guess now, though?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. I could see Emmanuel Forbes getting in there. No? Yeah. Is he a lock?
Yeah. I think there's enough NFL excitement about him that, I think he's going to go first.
Okay. And so this is crazy. And another one, I was going to throw Julian Friends out there.
That's the one. He's the one that we talked about him, I think, a while back. I think he's awesome. I think he's one of the best. I think he's in the upper echelon tier, maybe not in Gonzalez and Witherspoon tier because they were so dominant this year, but I think Brents could be a really special corner. And I think he's a slam dunk first round pick. I think he's going to go there as well too. So those are the five: Gonzalez, Witherspoon, Porter, Brents, and Forbes, I think, are the five I feel pretty confident going first round. And then guys like you mentioned, Ringo, Corey Trice, Cam Smith. I think I'm missing somebody else too, but a number of guys. I'm like Banks. No, he's in the top five. He'll be first round pick.
I must have missed
that. But we're throwing names out here too. But that's my point, is that 5 locks and 4 more guys who could definitely go is crazy.
Well, and that's crazy though. Like you told us, we were trying to guess 5 locks and we went through 9 years to get there. And
exactly.
Even the guys that are wrong, like, okay, maybe they're not going in the first round, but these are still quality prospects that are probably going early second round, because DJ Turner might be one of the better, you talked about earlier, there's not a lot of nickel corners. He might be one of the guys that better profiles in this entire class as a slot 100%. Corner going into the NFL. So there's so much talent at this position here. And it makes so much sense that in theoretically, you're like, oh, I'll catch somebody good in the second round. I'll sit there and I'll catch my DJ Turner, my Cam Smith in the second round, but you don't want to risk it. You don't want to risk missing out on all these guys. And I just think there's so many different levels to it. So it's going to be fun to watch the corners come off, because there's been a while since we've seen this many guys.
Yeah, no, I mean, I did I do kind of internally unexpected team needs and how teams might prioritize them. I think teams, from my estimation, have planned accordingly. I think a lot of teams also need corners and need nickel corners. And I think that's why we'll see a lot of these guys go early and often. So you mentioned deepest. I think on a draft historical standpoint, this will be among the higher ends for corners for sure, both in first round and throughout the whole draft. It's a loaded class.
Oh, it really is. I have another thought. If I set the over under,
yes, we're gambling tonight.
This is a fun game because, like you said, hey, look, we're gonna see 6, maybe 7 corners in the first round. If I set the over under on first cornerback taken at 6.5 in the draft spot, what you take under. So we think we're getting out.
I think the first 7 picks will be 3 quarterbacks: Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson, and the 2 corners. I think will be the first 7 picks, and maybe a 4th quarterback gets in there. I don't think so, but we'll see, and maybe that makes it a little tighter too. But that feels like what the first 7 picks in the draft are going to be, pretty confidently. So.
I like Christian.
I don't think you're getting by the Lions. I don't think you're getting by the Lions after that pick without at least 1 corner off.
Or if the Lions trade up for somebody. The Cardinals could use a corner. The Colts need a corner in the worst way, right? Seahawks corners probably in need at some point too in the draft. Maybe if they're just say, hey, we'll trade back a little bit and take Gonzalez, that makes some sense. The Lions have an opening too. The Raiders need it. All the teams picking after the first 2 could all say corners are our biggest need, and we wouldn't be surprised. So. That's why I feel pretty good about those 2 guys going, in the top 7 picks.
See, I think there's kind of, if you're looking at from a Kansas City Chiefs perspective, you have hit at corner in a very big way, 3 corners in 1 draft that can play.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of, L'Jarius Sneed's moving on next year if you don't sign him to extension. This is a deep class with a lot of talented players. And I just look at, value could fall to the Chiefs at 31 at the cornerback position, or you're just rooting for 7. You're rooting for 7 off the board so the Chiefs can go and address, a different position. I find it kind of interesting that one of the known top 30 visits that the Chiefs had is Cam Smith out of South Carolina. I just the fact that they were bringing him in for that just kind of interested me a little bit. Just because you're looking at this group, and it's a great group and it's a lot of talent. And who knows if the Chiefs are more in on the cornerback just because of the talent.
And I think he's a classic example of a guy that, hey, I don't think these guys are going to fall. But, man, like we just named all those guys. And what if he's the 9th corner, 10th corner, 11th corner? Like the 11th corner comes off somewhere in the 3rd round most years, right? So, one of these guys, I don't think they're going to, but one of these guys may fall, right? We didn't mention Corey Trice, who I think is outstanding as well. He might be an early 2nd round pick. Tyreek Stevenson has some fans on the league too. Keitrell Clark and Mekhi Blackman, both good nickel corners. Terrell Smith is an athlete. Like, these guys, I could see a teams being like, that's a good fit for us. And then Cam Smith's there in the late 2nd round. And the Chiefs say, hey, we can't pass on that kind of guy. So I think that teams doing a lot of homework on this cornerback group, especially that kind of 2nd tier, because they don't know who's going to be there at the end of round 2. And that's what's exciting about it.
So I want to ask you like a philosophical question about how you think an NFL team would approach this. Like in the Chiefs' shoes, they just had this draft last year where they hit essentially on 3 corners, or it looks like they're on their way to hitting. But how much still question is there going to be? Because it's only been 1 year. We don't know what's going to happen from here. We are talking about 2 of these guys were day 3 picks. You don't know what that projection, that development's going to be like. So if you're, in this Chiefs front office and you're going into this draft, are you thinking, do we have the cornerback room kind of set? We have our future for the cornerback room kind of set? Or are you still thinking, well, we don't know what these guys can be. 2 of them were these later round picks. Do we maybe consider just continuing to add top end talent to this just in case it ends up not working out?
So I know how a couple teams kind of build their, on the pro personnel side, are building their roster, and you kind of have not necessarily 2 boards, right? But you got your depth chart of your 90 players. And then you kind of have, whether it's in your head or color numerical, or some teams actually have a separate thing where it's like, this guy's part of our long-term future, right? The next 3 to 5 years. And I think that's where I'm not sure the Chiefs have, like, hey, do we think that the corners that they have are actually long-term answers, or are these just guys on the rookie contracts that we just hit on? And like, thank God we did, because we had no depth and we're good. So I think that goes back to, hey, just because you hit on any draft pick doesn't extinguish a need if a value is really there, right? If you think Cam Smith is an NFL starting corner, Jalen Watson was awesome as a starter this year, but maybe he's going to be just as good as a backup when you add Cam Smith, and then that becomes a strength, right? You don't want to have a whole roster. I learned that a long time ago. You don't want to have a whole roster of pretty goods, right? You got to have some really special units. The Seattle Seahawks had a really special pass rush, and that made their linebacker when they were a dynasty, right? And that made the corner's job much easier, and Brandon Bronner became a guy because pass rush so good, right? So, like, you kind of have to say, hey, this can be a strength. I think for the Chiefs, like, corner's not a weakness anymore. We add another top tier talent. Maybe that's one of our best units, and that can take some pressure off the pass rush, would maybe be lacking for the future too. So there's a lot of different strategies to do it. But what I know from teams is they kind of say, is this guy part of our long-term future? And that really, it helps them address some of the draft-based needs as you kind of look at that piece of it.
And that's where it's like, it's such an important position too. Like, I think continuing to invest in high positional value is just, it's smart business. Like, I think that's just a good approach to it. So, there could be value that falls to the Chiefs. There's a ton of value day 2 and day 3 of this draft, potentially at the cornerback position. We're going to talk about it right after this.
Whether you're a Chiefs, Royals, Sporting KC, KC Current, K-State, KU, or Mizzou fan, we've got you covered. Thanks for watching this production of KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Kansas City, the NFL draft is almost here. It's a fantastic time for our city. Make sure you're staying locked into us here at KC Sports Network, because we've got the draft covered. Chiefs have 10 picks. We'll see how many they actually use, but there's one selection that every football fan can share, and that's an ice-cold Miller Lite. The players change, the coaches change, the rules change, but Miller Lite is still the perfect beer for draft time, game time, and everything in between. Personally, when I want a beer with some flavor, but it's also light and won't make me feel bad, Miller Lite has been a go-to. It's light on calories, not taste. What's the point of drinking beer if you can't taste it? Till kickoff comes around again, enjoy the beer that tastes like the season. Miller Lite, great taste, 96 calories. To get Miller Lite delivered right to your door, visit MillerLite.com/KCSN. Or you can pick up some Miller Lite pretty much anywhere they sell beer. It's Miller time. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces.
Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.
Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you are watching it. Appreciate everybody that has been hanging out with us. Obviously, hey, we can't wait for the draft to get here. Make sure you're checking us out at Power and Light and on the KCSN YouTube channel all weekend. Also, hey, draft guide's available. It released last week. Make sure you check that out. $12.99 gets you 300 plus pages of Chiefs specific draft content. So we just got done kind of talking about the round one group. It's interesting you say, Galko, that, there's probably going to be a lot of corners that still fly off the board early just because they don't want to skip on all those guys. But even if a lot of guys fly off the board, there's still a lot of good players up and down this board. And again, I'm not just gonna pat you on the back too hard. So just prepare and brace yourself. But I thought you had a great group of great group of corners at the East-West Shrine Bowl. Some guys that have definitely had great processes, but also some guys that kind of surprised us, I think, when we were down there watching. Great interviews too that we really enjoyed talking to after as well. So one guy that really stood out, Keitrell Clark, you brought him up already.
Yeah.
He was he was a fun interview. I thought he had a really good process there at the East-West Shrine Bowl. I think he's had a good process, period.
Yeah, no, he tested well afterwards as well too. But I think Keitrell is first off a leader for that team, and I think the Louisville staff, just raved about him. Deion Branch, they're one of their player engagement and being their head coach for the bowl game. We talked for 30 minutes about kind of the person that he is and his style. I think NFL teams, he's a pro right away, and the Shrine Bowl he was dominant all week long at nickel on the outside, and had some things to address. He's a lighter guy, so he was very open about getting better in the run game. He showed that during the week of practice there too, but a great process. I think he's the best nickel in the draft. Him, Mekhi Blackman, Tre'Davious Hodges-Tomlinson. You mentioned DJ Turner, who can play some slot as well too. So they're all good nickels. But after those guys, in terms of guys who can play nickel, it kind of falls off a little bit, which is why I think Keitrell is going to be a top 100 pick, because he's a plug and play NFL starter at nickel, and that's really valuable. And the weight and the way he plays and the nickel transition, but can play outside. It reminds me a lot of Jack Jones from a year ago, who was at the East-West Shrine Bowl and fell to the fourth round because teams had lingering questions there too, but he ended up being a starter for the Patriots. I think that's kind of Keitrell Clark's destiny as well too. He's going to be a stud.
Talks just as much trash on the field, which is always a bonus, as Jack Jones did. I think it was really good for Keitrell Clark. I know he got injured last year and then he came back and they kind of put him in the slot for the first time. So it's good that he has that experience playing outside and inside, as a nickel, so he can do a little bit of both. You're not going to draft him with the sole purpose of knowing you have to stick him on the inside. Yeah, he's a little bit lighter. It might be his better spot, but having a guy with that demeanor, with that play style that can kick inside or play outside, I think that does help his kind of draft value a ton. There's some other smaller corners, later in the draft that are going to be nickels only. And I think with Keitrell Clark, you don't have to draft him as just that. So I think that's a big bonus for him.
I was kind of impressed with some of his press reps at the line of scrimmage. Honestly, he held up pretty well there, and that just checks, to your point, it just checks another box for him. I wouldn't be stunned. I don't know if do you think he sneaks into day two? I think he's probably a round 4 guy for me personally, but do you think there's a chance he's sneaking into day 2?
Absolutely. You mentioned, like you said, DJ Turner's, I think, a guy that teams like on the outside, but can play nickel. But after him, I think Mekhi Blackman of USC is a good corner as well and can play nickel as well. Did at Colorado, did at USC. Keitrell, I think, I'm biased, a notch better than Blackman. I think he just can play a little more, efficiently in the slot. And then Hodges-Tomlinson at TCU is a guy that some teams have to come with being a little bit smaller, but then after that, it kind of falls off. The cornerback as a class is very strong. Nickel is not in terms of NFL projection. So I think those guys get pushed up a little bit. And I think he's going to go late day 2, just based off some of the grades I've heard. But if he goes on day 3, he'll be one of the first guys off the board on day 3. I could see a team moving up for him in the 4th round to make sure he doesn't fall too far if he's there.
I'm kind of curious from your perspective, is Trey Hodges-Tomlinson the highest drafted cornerback from the Shrine Bowl this year? There's a couple of names I could see maybe giving him a run.
Yeah, him, Keitrell, Mekhi Gardner, answered some speed questions from LSU. He's really impressive. He was great this year. Terrell Smith of Minnesota, I think, talking with teams, he's probably got the best chance to be the first one taken, just because there are some really, really high grades on him around the league. And he's physical, outside corner, can press, and he's a 100-meter dash champion. So, but I think Hodges-Tomlinson, there are some teams that really say, he fits our scheme. He's athletic. He can move. He was productive. He won the freaking Jim Thorpe Award. Let's not overthink this. And I think he could be a guy that sneaks into round 2 with how much some teams like him. But I think all 4 of those guys have a really, really good chance of being any pick from anywhere between 55 and 100 picks overall.
Well, I was glad you mentioned Terrell Smith, because we were talking at the top of the show about it's a very big athletic cornerback class. But if you do miss on those guys in round 1 or maybe at the beginning of round 2, he's kind of one of those next names that's going to come up there if you're getting if you're looking for a big, long, physical, athletic corner. He's definitely a guy to keep an eye on there. And I think, starting maybe even late round 2, but into round 3, I would not be shocked at all to see his name come off there. He's a physical guy. He'll come up and play the run. He can turn and run vertically. Like, he can kind of do everything you want and has the size you want to see. So, like, that would be the guy I think I would place my money on. We like to talk about betting a lot before we start the show. So he'd be a guy that I'd place my money on to be the first corner just from that group. And not that anybody else is any worse. It's just that's the profile that I think the NFL likes to chase at the corner spot. And if you miss out on those top guys that have a similar profile, he makes a lot of sense to kind of get pushed up a little bit more because of it.
I think same way that Julius Brents is like not appreciating nothing. He's going to go first round. I think Terrell's going to be a second round pick, and people are going to be like, that's so surprising. And then you think about it like 6'1", runs a 4.3, 4-year starter. Like, sometimes scouting's not that hard. I think that's for him too. So
like 33-inch long arms. Like, it kind of checks every single box you're looking for.
It's pretty easy. Yeah, exactly.
Maddie, would you have an outside corner or more of a nickel profile added to this roster?
I guess for the Chiefs, another outside corner, because that's where they have their biggest questions, right? Like we were talking about, you don't know what Jalen Watson or Joshua Williams are going to be part of your long-term plan. I feel pretty confident that Trent McDuffie's in the long-term plan. And I know that he can play the slot or outside. L'Jarius Sneed, whether he's here or not, he gives you slot outside versatility. I think you would just be looking, if you were the Chiefs, trying to potentially add another body, to the boundary, get another big, long physical corner. Steve Spagnuolo loves those kind of guys.
I tend to agree with you. I wouldn't be stunned to see them grab either, though. Like, I could still see just maybe you want, like you think you believe Trent McDuffie can play a little bit more outside in base, kind of the L'Jarius Sneed role moving forward if you're not re-signing L'Jarius Sneed. So you're adding a little bit more nickel depth to your group for the long term. Like, I wouldn't be stunned to see either. I tend to lean outside corner, though, with you, though, just because, and it's never a bad thing to add those kind of guys. Like, like a Terrell Smith, like in the mix at cornerback for the Chiefs. Like, it makes a ton of sense and adds a ton of competition and depth to a group that is still young and pretty unproven. Like, that's the other thing.
The tricky part with the Chiefs and the slot too, their nickel corner is not a cover guy. He's kind of got to be able to do it. He's got to be able to blitz. He's got to be able to play the runs. Like, you can't just find, not that, all nickel corners can't do that. Obviously the Chiefs have found guys that do a lot of that other stuff, but that's just the tricky part about adding someone there. You have to feel very confident about them doing everything besides covering. So, like, I think that's why it's kind of hard to see them replacing McDuffie there after he already got Sneed kicked out, but we'll see.
Yeah. And I'm not saying, I think he'll be in there anyway when it's all said and done. But, okay. So there's a couple guys that I do want to talk to you about. Starling Thomas, did he have the best week of any cornerback there? Because, like, he was outstanding, I thought, at the East West Shrine.
Yeah, and ran a 4.4 at Pro Day as well too, when he was a non-combine guy, which was a bummer for him. I think we were really impressed there as well too. But he was really impressive all week long, and we've had a good run of Alabama Birmingham guys come to the Shrine Bowl and play well and get drafted. So I think he was in a great spot. Again, not being a common invite, I think really just hurt him because he had to do a lot more 30 visits and teams that, non-combine guys, where it really hurts is that unless you're considered a really, really top player, you're relying on 30 visits to be a top 4 or 5 round pick. But I think he's a guy that gets drafted. He's too impressive physically. He was too good that week. And I think he answered a lot of questions too, but he was one of the guys, I think, that definitely one of the 5 or 6 guys overall that really made a huge jump in how teams kind of perceive them leaving the week of practice for sure.
So, I just have another rogue guy not connected to Starling Thomas at all that I want to ask about. Yeah. Darius Rush is a guy that I think I struggled a little bit with watching because you can still tell that he transitioned to corner a little bit later. I feel like some of the instinct stuff, some of his spacing and stuff is so off, but we were speaking a lot, big, long, athletic guy, so it's hard to be too down on him. It's just it felt like he really still didn't figure out the corner position. I know he switched from wide receiver to corner while at South Carolina. Just I was kind of hoping to, see a little bit more, and then he kind of caught fire here in the draft process down the stretch.
Yeah, he's certainly has a ton of upside to keep getting better. That's the good impression with Rush, is that he's going to be a much different guy a year and a half from now than he is right now. But he was a leader on the team. He was one of the best athletes on the team. Right. Like, he's a guy that I think that program, when I talked to them, like, felt like, hey, he's going to be a big deal. Like, he's going to be an NFL player for a long time. If we could have him for a couple more years, that'd be a huge help. But he was an injury in college in 2020, transition receiver. Like, there's a lot of reasons to think that he's not who he's going to be in a year and a half from now too. So I think there's upside there. I think he's still more of a mid-day 3 guy for that reason, because you can't play him as a rookie. But I think for the Chiefs, as an example, hey, if you think Jalen Watson can start another year, like maybe Rush is a 5th, 6th round pick that you stash for a year, and by that playoff time, he's ready to go. So he's definitely one of the more intriguing corners in this draft, I think, especially on day 3.
If I remember right, he had a lot of special teams production. Well, South Carolina too, which it's a huge thing for a guy that's going to be potentially going in day 3. Sorry, Ken.
100%.
No, you were going to cut me off. I was just going to cut all of us off and take a break. We'll be back right after this.
I'm first again.
Whether you're a Chiefs, Royals, Sporting KC, KC Current, K-State, KU, or Mizzou fan, we've got you covered. Thanks for watching this production of KC Sports Network. Proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Folks, I got to tell you about today's sponsor, and that is Athletic Greens. I've been taking AG1 by Athletic Greens literally every day, and I gave it a try because I wanted to get that better gut health. I wanted to have the sustained energy. You got to support the immune system, especially this time of the year. And I hated taking all those pills and vitamins to actually get all those supplements, and it tastes great as well. I take it in the morning before I start my day, before I make that cup of coffee, and it makes me feel ready to take on everything that we've got going on here at KCSN. And you know, all great athletes take care of their body. I'm not the same kind of athlete as Patrick Mahomes, but I still like to take care of my body. And that's when I've been going to AG1. That's why I'm a huge fan. You get all that nutrition in just one little cup. It's great for long-term gut health support as well, with 75 high-quality ingredients that give me key daily nutrients. If a comprehensive solution is what you need from your supplemental routine, then Athletic Greens is giving you a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. Go to athleticgreens.com/KCSN. That's athleticgreens.com/KCSN. Check it out.
Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.
Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you are watching. Appreciate everybody. Make sure you are subscribed so you get all of the sweet draft content we have over the rest of the month of April. Just kind of breaking down this cornerback class, looking at it. Riley Moss is still a cornerback for us, Galko.
Yeah.
Are we crazy?
No, he's played corner. I think that Iowa defense is allows they play out cover 2, right? So you're kind of allowed to be a little more physical and not be as reliant on going vertical. And I'm not trying to typecast him too. He can definitely run, and he's shown he's athletic enough to play downfield too. So yeah, I think he's a corner depending on your scheme, but I think a lot of teams view he's a corner safety, not a nickel, right? But kind of one of those guys that's a weird corner safety hybrid, which is kind of becoming more of a thing as teams play a little more aggressive upfield. You want a corner who can tackle and maybe go to safety a little bit too. But I would say he probably gets worked out at both when he goes to a team. And he's going to be, again, he'll be a day 3 guy, so we can make a roster on special teams and adding versatility. And I think team-wise, we'll find out, like, hey, if he's going to be a corner, it'll be the team that drafts him. But it's a mix of both from teams to answer your question. I think he's a safety, but I'm not scouting for a particular scheme. So I can definitely see a team saying, hey, he's a corner for us.
Are there any other corners in this class that played corner in college for the most part that you kind of also have pegged that you think might be best suited to sliding over to safety? Buy you a time here. One guy that I kind of thought was Kidron Smith out of Kentucky.
Yeah.
He played safety, I think, early in his career, and then he switched to corner a little bit. So he kind of played both, but he has that really long kind of build, and he showed some ability to play man coverage, but you probably feel a lot better if he's only playing man coverage, maybe out of the slot versus big slot guys or a tight end rather than on the boundary versus some corners. But his tackling and his physicality, he's a guy that looks like his athletic profile might be better at safety. Is there anybody else out in this draft class that kind of jumps out to you in that way?
Jartavis Martin at Illinois, I think could do it. I think he could transfer over. He's a bigger dude. I think, one guy that made the transition from corner to safety during the draft process at the Shrine Bowl, not to do Shrine Bowl again, sorry, Art Green from Houston.
Yeah.
I thought we had Demarion Williams the year before, and me and him talked about Art, and Art was I think he's super athletic and long. He looks the part of a corner, and the film wasn't complete this year, wasn't consistent, and he made this into transition to safety at the Hula Bowl. And Art was on our radar already, but at the Hula Bowl, he was like, holy shit, this guy may be a really athletic safety. I think he's going to be a draft pick and maybe a 4th, 5th round pick because he's so athletic, high character guy, no injury issues. Athletic, like he's a 10 out of 10 for most teams in terms of athlete. And he made a transition to safety at the Shrine Bowl. And that's not the same as Armani Rogers, who played tight end last year for the first time ever at the Shrine Bowl, but Art's never played safety before and kind of figured it out. So it's kind of a testament that, like, hey, if you're athletic enough and you can be a little physical in the run game, that transition is not as hard as we make it out to be sometimes. But Art's probably the best example of a guy that's only going to be a safety in the NFL and will be a 4th, 5th round pick because of the transition to safety early in the draft process.
So there's one guy that I wanted to ask you about for sure. Just because
there's one guy too that I want to talk about a little bit after this too, because one guy we haven't talked about yet that deserves way more attention.
Oh, this would be crazy if it's the same guy.
I was going to ask.
Awesome.
I was going to ask you that question anyway, but this is perfect.
Okay.
This is why we're just on firing all cylinders on this show. There's a local kid, believe it or not, went to Baser High School here in the KC Metro. It's Eric Scott out of Southern Miss.
Yeah.
So how's that process been for him? Have you got good feedback on his outlook?
Yeah, we have. And Eric, I was actually talking with a team the other day about kind of our Shrine Bowl process, and how it works this year is a lot of our first invites to players are mix of our grades. There's a lot of guys that are like Zay Flowers. I didn't have to ask any NFL team if they thought he was good. I was pretty sure on that one, right? But a lot of our first invites are guys that area scouts also seem to agree with and work with teams on that. And then, as you guys saw, a lot of guys go back to school. I play an all-star game, so there's always a second wave. And a lot of those second waves are the guys that, hey, area scouts sometimes be damned. Like, these are guys that we like. And Eric was in one of those guys because we thought, hey, the film was too impressive. Like, we thought he was really impressive. He showed that with the vertical and broad jump that were among the best corners in the draft, but really physical. I think there's speed questions there, understandably too, but physical, shutdown guy, did not allow, I think he only allowed like 25, 30 targets all season, right? Like, he was like really like not even targeting that defense at all. Watching those, like, just a lane game, I forgot what number Eric Scott was while I was watching it because he wasn't targeted the whole game. I think he's shown that the speed's going to be a question for a lot of teams, but I hope he gets drafted. I think he will get drafted because the vertical jump and broad jump and the Shrine Bowl week in the film this year was too impressive, but he's a guy that probably deserves a lot more attention for sure.
It was nice watching him at the Shrine Bowl because it was a guy that was very physical. Like, without having seen him before, kind of we got there too much, seeing him get up there and challenge, any wide receiver lining up across from him in a pretty good, wide receiver group there. And he was physical, good press technique. And then that you could see that explosion, like, first couple steps, he could undercut a route. He could stay right there stride for stride with somebody. So he really did impress me there for a guy I hadn't seen a whole lot. And it was nice to see him test pretty well for that coming into the rest of the process and kind of keep some of that momentum moving forward.
Sure. Galko, I don't want to catch you off guard with this question.
Yeah. I've already been caught off guard 3 times by Maddie, so you'll be fine. So
yeah,
who's a corner that transitioned to safety? You got 3 seconds.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
I bought you sometime.
This is very clear. We don't prep before it. It's all they're all top of the head here. So, anyways, go ahead, Tim.
As we shouldn't. The best content is
exactly.
I don't want to blindside you with this, but
Hunting the
who's a cornerback that we're not talking enough about?
I mentioned him in passing earlier. I think Corey Trice of Purdue is in that same top tier group as Joey Porter Jr., Julius Brents, Deontay Banks. I think he's really, really impressive. And it's hard because his 2021 film was good, but not consistent enough. And then in 2022, he was dealing with an injury most of the season. And like, I always go back and talk to teams about this. Like, his Syracuse game, he was probably at 40, 50%. But he was just shutting guys down, press, physical, eliminating players that whole game. And he was like banged up all year. And Corey's a great dude. I still talk to Corey all the time. He was going to come to Shrine Bowl, but he wanted to get 100% because he was still banged up. And it was an easy conversation. Totally get him in, get right. And we watch film still about some of the teams that might draft him. But like, I think that guy is a first round pick all day. And I think he doesn't get talked about enough. I saw someone the other day mention him as a day 3 sleeper. And I almost blocked that person on Twitter, like, automatically. I was so mad. So no, he's a guy that, again, I love Julius Brents. I think he's a top tier player as well too. But Corey Trice is, I think we'll look back in a year or two and be like, that guy fell to the 3rd round. I don't know what's going to happen, but like, he's going to be one of the better corners in this year's draft. If he's the best corner in this year's draft, I won't be shocked. That's how talented I think Corey Trice can be now that he's fully healthy.
And so hearing, you saying that how injured he was, that kind of makes sense because watching him this year, something seemed a little bit off. Most of the times, what I felt when he had to turn and run and really start to play the ball downfield, there wasn't a limitation doing it, but it looked a little clunky. He looked very uncomfortable trying to turn, run, and then play the ball downfield and some of his changing of direction. So hearing that this was something that was bothering him because of an injury, that makes a lot more sense for why some people are going to be a little bit higher. And I did know last year, because I had watched him a little bit coming into this year, it was inconsistent. The traits were all there, and he was kind of on this list of guys that I think might really shoot up. And then the draft board coming into the season, playing through an injury probably doesn't help the film aspect of that. It's like, it is good to hear that, because I definitely felt like there was he didn't even look like the same players I saw last year. And it's like, what do I do with this going forward? I did not know the injury was that bad though.
Yeah, it just lingered all year, and it just hurt his downfield transition stuff, and that's all it was too. I heard from I saw it on Twitter, talked to somebody about it, but someone made the Antonio Cromartie comp, and I was like, that's it. Like, he's Trice, the guy that could erase people with physicality, and like, you want to go on a fade around him, like, you're totally effed, right? Like, it's not going to happen. Quick slant, not going to happen. So like, I think it could be a dominant player. I think a lot of other bigger corners, they can misstep sometimes and get beat on quick slants. That's how you beat those kind of guys. But I don't think you beat out Corey Trice. He's one of the most athletic corners in this draft class, and then he was finally healthy for the combine process. So he's a guy. I appreciate the 45 seconds a minute on him, but like, I think he's an awesome player. He's going to be a long-time NFL starter. He'll be one of the best corners in this year's draft class.
6'3", 206, 32.5-inch arms.
Not hard sometimes, Kent. Not hard sometimes.
4.47 40. I mean, that's a guy you might swing on. We'll see where Corey Trice is drafted in a couple weeks. That's going to be it for the KCSN Draft Show. Thank you all so much for listening. Catch you later.
Thanks for watching this production of KC Sports Network, the fastest growing sports media network in Kansas City. Check out these videos that feature our team of more than 15 former players, insiders, and analysts, bringing you the best Chiefs coverage you can find. Entertain, educate, inform. KC Sports Network.